When I first met him, I hated him. In fact, I still do, at least during office hours. Alex Reeve is everything I despise in a colleague. Sharp, strategic, and ruthless. He's a master of turning every situation to his advantage, always with that smug smile plastered on his face, as if he's won the battle before it's even begun. Our rivalry isn't just about competition, it's personal. He pushes all my buttons, poking at every insecurity I've worked so hard to bury. He never hesitates to remind me of my flaws, even when I'm succeeding. I can see it in his eyes. The challenge, the constant assessment of my every move, waiting for me to slip so he can seize the opportunity. But I'm no fool. I won't give him the satisfaction of showing weakness. Instead, I channel that anger into something productive. I work harder, smarter, knowing that every step I take brings me closer to the success I've dreamed of. It's easy to hate someone from a distance. It's easy to look at them through a lens of resentment, to see them as nothing more than an obstacle. But it's a whole different story when you find yourself alone with them. That's how it started, innocently, or at least I thought it was. Late one night, a few weeks into the new project we were both assigned to, we found ourselves in the office together, the building nearly empty except for the two of us. "I'm surprised you're still here," I remarked, trying to sound indifferent, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. Alex looked up from his laptop, his dark eyes locking with mine. "Could say the same about you," he said, voice low, almost teasing. There was a silence between us, charged with an unspoken tension. His gaze lingered on me for a beat longer than necessary, and I had to look away to regain composure. But in that brief moment, something shifted. Something I couldn't explain. He was my rival. He had always been my rival. But right then, I wasn't sure what I was feeling. There was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that drew me toward him. I knew I should leave. I should just walk out of the office and avoid whatever madness was brewing between us. But instead, I stayed. And when he finally stood and approached me, I didn't stop him. It happened so quickly, I didn't have time to think. His hand brushed against mine as he reached for the same file I had been holding. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a jolt through me, an electric shock that coursed through my veins like wildfire, searing away any rational thought. I froze, my fingers trembling slightly as I stared at the hand that had just grazed mine, lingering in the air between us. The space felt charged, too close, too intimate. I looked up at him, my breath caught in my throat. His face was unreadable, a mask of indifference. But his eyes, those dark eyes, betrayed him. There was something flickering in them, something raw and unrestrained. A hunger, a need that I couldn't deny, and for a brief moment, I saw the truth behind the facade. It was a dangerous look, and it mirrored everything I had been trying to push away inside myself. Without a word, he stepped closer. The heat of his body radiated toward me, enveloping me in a magnetic pull that I couldn't escape. My pulse hammered in my chest, every beat a thunderous reminder of how close he was. How close we were. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, anything to break the tension. But my words died in my throat. The air between us thickened, the weight of it pressing against me, making it hard to breathe. Then, without warning, his lips crashed into mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft, like the tentative first kiss between two people testing the waters. No, this was something more urgent, reckless, even. A kiss that spoke of need, of fire burning between us, igniting everything in its path. His lips were insistent, bruising, as if he couldn't wait any longer to claim me. His hands slid around my waist, pulling me flush against him, his body hard and unyielding, as if to remind me that he was here, in control, and he wasn't going anywhere. My hands found their way to his chest, my fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt as if holding on to something, anything, that would keep me anchored. But there was no stopping it now. His touch was a force of nature, one that consumed me whole, and I was powerless to resist. The kiss deepened, and I felt his tongue slide against mine, coaxing me to follow his lead, to surrender to the electric chemistry that had been simmering between us for weeks. For the first time since I met him, the world around us ceased to exist. There was no office, no rivalry, no lines we shouldn't cross. There was only the heat of his body pressed against mine, the thundering rhythm of our breaths, the insatiable pull that tethered us together. I could feel every inch of him, his every movement sending waves of heat through me, drowning me in the intensity of the moment. His hands slid lower, grazing the small of my back, pulling me tighter to him until there was no space between us, no barrier to the connection we were sharing. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was inevitable. We had crossed the line, and neither of us could turn back now. The next morning, the office was as cold as it had always been. Our usual rivalry was still there, only now it was laced with a new tension, one neither of us could explain or escape. I avoided him as much as possible, pretending like the night before had never happened. But every time our eyes met across the room, I felt that same heat, that same electric pull. Alex, however, was a master at playing the game. He acted like nothing had changed. He insulted me, undermined my ideas, and pushed me to my limits, just like before. But beneath the surface, I could feel him watching me, waiting for the next moment we would share in private. I tried to focus, tried to drown out the growing desire in me, but it was useless. Every time I thought about our kiss, my mind would race, my body would ache. I wanted more, but I couldn't let him win. Not like this. It was late again when I found myself standing outside his office, the building cloaked in silence, empty except for the two of us. My heart pounded in my chest like a drumbeat, drowning out everything else. My mind was a swirling mess, confusion, desire, fear, all mixed together, leaving me paralyzed at the threshold. I knew what I was about to do, but that knowledge didn't make it any easier. This could change everything. I could lose everything. My hand hovered over the door handle, my breath shaky, every nerve in my body on edge. I knocked, the sound sharp in the stillness, but my pulse was louder. A moment passed, and the tension in the air thickened before his voice cut through the silence. Low, commanding, and all too familiar. "Come in." I stepped inside. There he was sitting at his desk, the same calculating expression on his face. He looked so damn collected, as if everything between us, the tension, the chaos, meant nothing. But I knew better. His eyes met mine, and for the briefest of moments, the mask slipped. His expression softened, just enough for me to catch the flicker of something deeper, darker. That hunger. That same raw need that had been simmering beneath the surface from the moment we first collided. It was enough to make me freeze. For a fraction of a second, I thought about turning around and walking out. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I took a step toward him, the sound of my feet echoing in the quiet room. My body was already betraying me, my hands trembling, betraying the calm I was trying to project. My fingers moved toward the buttons on my shirt, but it felt like they weren't even mine. They were his, responding to the pull between us, guided by the force of something more powerful than willpower. His eyes never left me. They followed every movement, every breath I took, like he could see straight through the thin veil I was trying to hold up. His gaze was intense, molten, like fire threatening to consume me whole. My pulse raced, my breath quickening, the air between us so thick I could taste it on my tongue. And when I met his eyes again, I saw it. No more games, no more masks. It was pure, unfiltered desire. I reached for the next button, my hands trembling with anticipation, the heat rising in my body, making it almost impossible to think. Every inch of me was aware of him, of his presence, of the space between us that was disappearing with every step I took. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat a reminder of how far I was already gone, how little I was prepared for what was about to happen. And when I looked back up at him, I saw it. His jaw clenched, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. His hands were resting on the desk, but I could see the tension in his fingers, the way they twitched as if he was fighting to hold himself back. The hunger in his eyes flared, burning brighter than before. And in that moment I knew he wasn't going to let me walk away. Neither of us was walking away from this. What followed that night was something neither of us could have predicted. The intensity of our connection, the way our bodies responded to each other, was beyond anything I had ever experienced. There was no pretending anymore. We were no longer rivals in the traditional sense. Now, we were lovers, fierce, passionate, and reckless. But as much as we wanted it, as much as we needed it, there was still the world to face when the sun came up. And the more we gave in to this secret desire, the harder it became to keep it hidden. At work, we played our roles to perfection, fighting for dominance, each trying to outdo the other. But behind closed doors, we were something else entirely. And the more it happened, the more I feared the consequences. I had no idea how long we could keep up the charade. Our lives were spiraling towards something neither of us could control. It was only a matter of time before someone found out, before the truth came crashing down. And when it did, well, I wasn't sure what would be left of us.
Hey there. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe to help us grow and keep sharing amazing content with you. And feel free to explore our other videos, we've got so much more epicness waiting for you. Thank you for being part of our journey, you're the real MVPs.